see some very illustrious people in the audience. I won't name them because if I start naming them, I'll leave somebody out. But a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for coming along to this book launch. I think your presence here in a large number is a tribute, not to us, but a tribute to the author of this biography, E.B. Brown. Let's give him a round of applause. I think it must take enormous courage to be imprisoned on Robben Island, then be released from serving a sentence, then go back into immediate active duty for the liberation movement, then come back into the operational arena, and then be arrested again. It is courage, rarely of rare precedence in our history and certainly in world history. So the title Beyond Fear is indeed an appropriate title. We will speak, all of us will speak for a short while, but hopefully at the end we'll allow for a bit of participation by any of you who wish to say something. So let's start off with Sarah and Caden. Will you come up, please? Sarah and Caden are two of E.B.'s 3 children, and they will read extracts from the book.
In this excerpt from Beyond Fear, Ibrahim recounts the drama of sentencing. Everyone's day of sentencing is uniquely intense. In our case, we didn't know it was uniquely intense. But I wasn't afraid of the verdict. I was a freedom fighter, and I was ready to pay the price. I remembered something my interrogator, Keith Hughes, had said to me in John Foster Square, when he bragged that the ANC and MK were being destroyed. "We will get you one by one," he hissed. "We will rule this country for another 200 years. Yet on the day of our sentencing, our people were openly showing the victory salute and singing in defiance of the apartheid state in court. Keith wasn't blind, he could see the end. He wasn't deaf, you could hear the triumph in their voices. I wrote a 17-page statement which I used to address the court from the dock. As I started speaking, I realized I couldn't have cared less about Keith. My statement had said, "You are certain that this court will decide to impose on us various sentences, though we shall condemn it as a perpetuation of the system of injustice to which millions of our people are subject. We do not fear such an outcome. To fear it would mean that when we join the struggle for the emancipation of our people, we did not understand the nature of the enemy we had to confront, but we know who it is that we and the rest of the freedom-loving people of our country have to fight to turn into the reality, the dream of South Africa, that shall belong to all people, both black and white. We have brushed shoulders with the angels of death, who guard the king and princes that occupy the apartheid throne. In their hands they carry the gun, the hangman's noose, and vile instruments of torture. We know that the throne they defend can only stand if it is surrounded by a moat of human suffering."
When I was detained both in 1963 and 1986, I refused to answer questions during interrogation. To me, this was a matter of deeply held principles. During this detention, I told the police that I would rather die in detention than betray the trust of a single person or organization. The judge found me guilty and sentenced me to 20 years, saying he wanted to give me a lengthy jail term so that when I left prison again, I would be an old man, because my previous 15 years inside had clearly not done me any good. After all, on my release, I had gone straight back to the ANC. The judge's words had barely left his mouth when the people in court spontaneously stood up and shouted, "Viva ANC, viva!" and "Amandla," and began to sing the national anthem in Nkosi Sikelel' iAfrika. Court officials tried to stop them, but they carried on, louder and louder, drowning out the protests. When the singing eventually subsided, a state prosecutor, Louise van der Walt, did something unexpected. She burst out with the words, "Long live the AWB!" Colleagues had to quieten her down, but she was heard shouting back at them, "Why do you have to shut me up when others are allowed to sing?" Van der Walt was one of the regime's prosecutors who questioned my comrades in London. She attended those hearings with DPs. We went back to Pretoria prison as convicts. We were put in prison garb and given prison food. This was entirely different from when we were on trial. In my isolation cell that night, I thought about the journey I would now have to make to Robben Island and wondered what the place would be like. My mother broke down and cried. She was losing me, her son, for the second time. Yes, 20 years was a long term. With the 15 years I'd already served, my time in jail would practically take up a larger part of my life. But I thought of how foolish the judge was to even imagine that prison walls would deter people from struggling for freedom and fighting against oppression. We are incapable of being stopped.